Okay, so it started recording. All right. So coming back to this is like, what people do is like, they start with one resource and they read about another resource and third resource and the fourth resource. And at the end, what happens is that, they make a fuss of simple, really simple exam. And at the end, they are not able to even clear the exam. And when they come back and when they read the reviews and they said, we had done this, and still we did not manage to pass the exam. So what is beneficial is for you guys is to use a simple question bank, whichever you want to study from, just any one, all right, and stay focused to that. Meanwhile, what we are going to do is we are going to divide different units, and we're going to start with the most difficult one, which is cardiology, which every candidate, most of the candidates find a bit boring and difficult, and they always keep this topic at the last because it's the MCQs are also quite lengthy, and some of the topics are really, really difficult to understand and grasp. So we are going to start with this. So when we make the difficult one easy, so more, with coming up the topics, we're going to make it like, more simpler. So what is going to happen with you guys is once we are done with the cardiology lectures, it's going to be approximately 4 to 5 lectures. We are trying because cardiology is really, really huge, and it's a bit of challenge to basically compress them into 1 hour of lecture over 3 to 4 days, and then we're going to have mocks over it. So we are going to basically judge you, and you can also see yourself how well you have improved after our lectures. And it's going to be like whether you need improvement or whether you have any doubts, anything related to the topic. So we'll be there here to explain. So what's going to happen is after cardiology we are going to have a mock, and then we'll move on to the next unit. So it's going to happen with every, and at the end we are going to have one final big mock, which will be exam oriented. And what's going to happen is you can assess yourself where do you stand. Another thing about this course is it's very helpful because guys, most of the people they are working a job or two, and when they come back home they're really tired, and instead of studying they just go back to taking rest. So what's going to happen is, so since there are classes happening, so you're at least going to attend the class. So what I would advise you all is at least attend the class, so that you get the know-how. Because I know double jobs, single jobs are really, really it's difficult, to prepare, but it's a challenge. So today, guys, I've already given a demo previously in my in Sir's Academy. So today we're going to start again with the same topic, and we are going to slowly move on to the rest of the topics. We're going to see how much we can cover in 1 hour. So today we are going to start with is Murmur. Murmur and its MCQs, and then we're going to see like if we can cover some other topic in between the time duration. So it's basically upon you guys. So if you have any doubts, you can ask at the end. Meanwhile, you can also ask in the WhatsApp group as well, so that the recording once it's done and we have the recording. So at the end, because if you start asking in between, what's going to happen is that's going to increase the time of the recording. So if you ask in the chat group where you're added in the group, so I'm going to read your chat. Meanwhile, please guys keep your WhatsApp group open. So when I ask you some questions, I need you guys to answer. So it's going to be an interactive session. It's not going to be a boring session that when I come and go and give a lecture on and just move on with the topic. So I want all of you guys to participate in the WhatsApp group. You can, because I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I no longer I'm going to have access to the chat of the Zoom. So please do take part in the WhatsApp group where you're already added, and you can ask questions over there. So let's begin, guys. So first of all, let me share the screen. Okay. Okay. So I hope everyone can see my screen, guys. Just please type in the WhatsApp group so we can begin. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, guys. So first of all, we are going to start on murmurs. All right. So, guys, what is a murmur? Murmur is basically it's the sound, it's the turbulent sound which you hear. Like you can imagine. Um, it's like a door, either you are unable to completely close the door, which is called a rigors, and or either it's difficult to open the door, which is called stenosis. So when it's difficult to open or close, that the turbulence it's making, it's called murmur. So coming to that, if it's incomplete opening, incomplete opening, like the valve is trying to open, like the door is trying to open, and it's incomplete opening because of some pathology, we call it stenosis. Similarly, if it's unable to close completely the valve, it's called regurgitation. I think so. This is pretty much simple to understand. Uh, no doubts, I think, till now. So, coming to another concept is S1 and S2. Now, most of us in our times, we were house officers and we used to write, in our daily progress notes, S1 plus S2 plus 0. And some of us were like, pretty much over the board and knowing the meaning of S1 and S2. But some of us, for the sake of just writing it down, you just write, S1 plus S2 plus 0 in the CVS section. So, well, now it's time now to understand what's the meaning of it. So, S1 is the first cardiac sound. It's related to basically mitral and tricuspid valve closure. So, whenever these two valves close, it's going to make S1 sound, and whenever the aortic and pulmonary valves close, it's called as S2. It's the sound is called S2. I hope I'm clear with this. Anyone having any doubts till now? Okay. So, coming to this, uh, guys, I need you to be pretty much interactive, either yes or no. So, if you're having doubt, you can write yes, and then on the next sentence, you can write with the doubt, whatever you have. Okay. So, thank you for responding. So, what's going to happen is whenever there's S1 from L, we have S1 phase and we have S2. So, there's S1 sound, so that is the period of systolic. All right. So this is a little bit of background on the murmurs. You don't need to remember this for the exam. This is just to build your foundation on which I'm going to teach and elaborate the murmurs, and they're really simple. So what's going to happen is whenever there is an S1 sound, that means a systolic phase has started, and when till the S2 phase, and then the diastolic phase after what do you call the after S2 phase. So opening of the closing of the aortic and pulmonary valves, then what happens is the diastolic phase starts. So there's a systolic phase and there is a diastolic phase. So S1 to S2 again systolic phase, and S2 to S1 is the diastolic phase. In other words, what you call it isovolumic contraction. What is isovolumic contraction? Is iso means same, volume means no change in the volume, and contraction. So, and the other one is isovolumic relaxation, the S2 part. This is the basic of S1 and S2. I hope I'm clear till now, guys. You don't need to remember this for the exam. This is just for building the concept. Coming to this now, this is another important line which you guys need to remember. All right. Now, this is right-sided murmurs and left-sided murmurs. Guys, write this down with yourself. So what's going to happen is there are right-sided murmurs, which are called tricuspid and pulmonary, and there are left-sided murmurs which are called aortic and mitral. So these are the left-sided murmurs and other are the right-sided. Guys, do not confuse, again, do not confuse with the area of auscultation. That is something else. These are murmurs, because aorta is on the right side of the sternum, so we confuse, oh, how it cannot be the right-sided murmur. Do not. It's the cardiac, it's the heart orientation in such a way that the right-sided murmurs are tricuspid and pulmonary, whereas left-sided murmur are aortic and mitral. So do not confuse with the heart sound. I used to confuse them, and I used to really, really get me thinking like, why is this? Why is this? So I had a detailed questioning from a cardiologist, and basically she explained to me it is the orientation So you can remember this in the exam in such a way. Do not worry. I have discussed this really in detail. So what happens is that the left ventricle is going to open into aorta, right? So aorta and left and the mitral, we call it the left side, and the pulmonary and the what you call the tricuspid, there since on the right side the pathway is same, so it's pretty much the same, so it's called the right sided. I hope I'm clear till now, guys. Do not confuse it with the area of auscultation. Am I clear, guys? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, guys, so the next slide is macaroni in pan. I hope you guys have got your dinner, because I have macaroni in pan is one of my favorite dishes, and it gets really really. So this is not to get you guys uh, drooling your saliva or something. This is just for making you understand how to remember murmurs. So when you remember macaroni in pan, this is the only line which is going to help you remember all of the murmurs. Because in the exam, if you sit and start thinking about each and different murmurs, it's going to be a very, very difficult, or it might take time, and you do not have time. Basically, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to solve around each and every MCQs. More or less, you can say 1 minute and 15 seconds, because there's turnover the page, and there are some candidates, they're coughing, someone is playing with their pen, and you are distracted, and you want to look at them, and you want to look at the paper. So you can cut down that time with 1 minute. In 1 minute, it's it's kind of impossible to go through all of the murmurs. Okay, this is going to be this is going to be this is going to be this. So it's very difficult. But when you remember macaroni in pan, it's going to make it really simple for you guys. Now let me explain how. So basically, what is macaroni in pan? It's basically what we are going to remember from it. It's basically MR. So we have R over here and M over here in pan. So that is mitral regurgitation in pansystolic murmur. Okay, so now you know the mitral regurgitation part comes in a systolic phase called as, and the first line is pan. Am I clear, guys? So what will help this will help me out. So what will happen is that mitral stenosis is going to happen in a diastolic phase, because mitral regurgitation is happening in a systolic phase. So mitral stenosis is going to be completely opposite to mitral regurgitation. Okay, I hope till now I'm clear. Guys, this is very, very high yield, okay? So this is what you guys have to remember. I want all of you guys to be very attentive and listen to this. All right, now what happens is that, now coming back to S1 and S2, okay? So the way mitral behaves, okay, the tricuspid is going to behave as well. Let me make it more clear. So if there is mitral regurgitation, in pansystolic, there can be also tricuspid regurgitation. I'll come in and explain this a bit in detail. So similarly, if there's tricuspid regurgitation happening in pansystolic, so it's going to be completely opposite in the diastolic phase, in which it will be happening tricuspid stenosis. Am I clear, guys? I'm so sorry for my bad handwriting, but I have made notes. You can later on read it. Am I clear, guys? Any questions? Yes or no? No. Can you please it again? Okay. Okay. Let me make it again. I'll get to it. All right. So let me elaborate it more further. So I have read a mnemonic. All right. So remember that I have attended a lecture in which they say mitral regurgitation is happening in pansystolic murmur. Since in S1 we have two valves, tricuspid and mitral, they basically are contracting in the same cardiac cycle, right? So their nature is same. So if it's whenever in the exam it comes pansystolic murmur, it could be either mitral regurgitation or either it could be tricuspid regurgitation. Okay. And since you know regurg of mitral and tricuspid is happening in the systolic phase, so in diastolic phase, what is happening? It could be either mitral stenosis or tricuspid stenosis, completely opposite. It is opposite to each other. Is it now more clear, Doctor? Dr. Ali? That's perfect. All right. Now there's another thing. So, like, the AV valves in the pulmonary, they are having a similar nature. So they're like basically like you can say the stepmom. So whatever the wife is going to say, the stepmom is going to say, the opposite thing. So in systolic phase, now mitral and tricuspid regurgitation is happening. So since it's completely opposite, so it will be aortic and pulmonary stenosis. So whenever there's a systolic phase, it could be either regurg of mitral and tricuspid and opposite, aortic and pulmonary stenosis. Whereas in diastolic, since you're having mitral stenosis and tricuspid stenosis, so you're going to have aortic regurgitation or pulmonary regurgitation. So whenever, am I clear, guys? Any question till now? Perfect, perfect. So what's basically going to happen? So whenever in an MCQ, they tell you that there's a murmur in systolic phase, you're going to either remember it's going to be either mitral tricuspid regurgitation or it could be aortic or pulmonary stenosis. If in MCQ it's telling you there's a murmur in diastolic, it's going to be completely opposite to this. It could be either mitral stenosis, tricuspid stenosis, or aortic or pulmonary regurg. So it's going to be completely opposite to each other. Don't worry, guys. Let me erase this quickly and let's move on. Okay, guys. So here I've drawn a beautiful diagram for you guys. So here's this murmur. Okay. So coming down, we have a systolic phase and a diastolic phase. So in systolic, what we're having? Mitral regurgitation, tricuspid regurgitation, similarly aortic stenosis and pulmonary stenosis. Similarly, in diastolic phase, we are having completely opposite. Mitral stenosis, tricuspid stenosis, and aortic regurgitation. Pulmonary. Just imagine there's a mirror in between, and it's completely opposite. So how you're going to remember this in the exam? It's too difficult. Just remember pansystolic, macaroni in pan, macaroni in pansystolic murmur. So MR in pan. So this is how you're going to quickly deduce yourself. Okay. Now, coming to the other thing. Now, since I've written pansystolic murmur, what else can we add to it? We can add to it mitral. I'll come on to the VSD later on, guys. Just for now, just forget about that. All right. We can add tricuspid regurgitation. So now in pansystolic, we are having mitral regurgitation and we are having tricuspid regurgitation. There's another systolic murmur, which is called ejection systolic. So already we have put these two contents in pansystolic. What we are left with, aortic stenosis and pulmonary stenosis, we are going to add this in ejection systolic murmur. Okay, guys. Any questions till now? Okay, someone is typing. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Similarly, in diastolic, we are having two, early diastolic and mid-late diastolic. So what is basically early? If you want to go little, you don't need to go in the detail, but let me explain. Since you have a diastolic phase started after S2, so there's this early and there is this mid-late. So basically, it's telling these murmurs of mitral stenosis and tricuspid is coming in the late part, and early diastolic is basically in early diastolic there is aortic regurgitation and pulmonary regurgitation. So basically, you don't need to go into detail. I was just, for the sake, I wanted to make you understand. So what's going to happen is we are having early diastolic phase in which we have AR and pulmonary regurgitation, and in mid late we are having mitral stenosis and tricuspid stenosis. All right, guys. So I drew this diagram for you because I did not want you to confuse this diagram with the left-sided murmur and the right-sided murmur. Now let's make a question, guys. All right, now let's make an MCQ for you guys. All right, so I say there's a pansystolic murmur, okay, and that increases with inspiration. So which murmur it could be? Just give a wild guess. Okay, guys. Now, okay, someone said tricuspid regurgitation. Now let me make you understand this again. Okay, so to remember this very easily, what you're going to do is, see, I'll make it more easy for you guys. So the right has I. So right has I. So I from it includes in the I from inspiration. Left has E in the left, expiration. So right-sided murmurs are going to sound more louder when a person is inspiring. Similarly, the left-sided murmur, the person's is going to sound the murmur is going to sound more louder when the person is expiring. So aortic and pulmonary and tricuspid. So this is how you're going to say. So when I say there is a pansystolic murmur increasing on inspiration, automatically you will say tricuspid what regurg, right? So because pansystolic murmur, tricuspid regurgitation. This is how you're going to deduce. Similarly, if I say if it's increasing on the expiration, then it's a mitral what do you call mitral regurgitation. So this is how you are going to further on divide if there is MR and TR. So either you check if it's louder on inspiration, so it's TR, and if it's louder on expiration, it is MR. So this is how you're going to further draw the flowchart for yourself. Am I clear, guys? Any questions? That's perfect. So I hope you guys are finding this lecture easy. It's not that difficult. All right. So let's come to the most important part. All right, guys. Now, whenever you want to learn any thing for your, for your exams, you need to first know where your exam is located or where your exam is currently for. So whenever you see that if there is any particular disease common in that country, that means that that particular disease is very important and that should be on your fingertips because it's very common over there and they definitely want you to know that because you're going there. If you're not learning that, that means you are not thorough with their country's diseases, and you know definitely a question might come. So this is how you're going to whatever is common in UK, you're going to give it high priority. All right, guys. So coming to this, uh I'm going to later on more explain to you how to like remember most of them, what murmurs are very important for exam. The first is, okay, someone who wants to let in. All right, sorry. Okay, guys, be on time. You have missed a great length of important lecture. Okay, so I've let you in. Okay, so aortic stenosis. How you're going to remember this? Please mute your mic, guys, as you let yourself in. Okay, so coming back to this. So basically, it's important is what you have to remember. All right, guys. So I've made this diagram for you, an A shape between S1 and S2. Since I've told you that from S1 to S2 phase, we are having a systolic period, right? So there's either mitral tricuspid regurgitation or aortic or pulmonary stenosis. So it's called crescendo decrescendo, is that you draw an A between S1 and S2. So crescendo going up and decrescendo going down. So this is just a mnemonic if you guys want to remember for your exam. So coming to this is aortic stenosis. So it's the most common in UK. Either it would tell you, the patient had an MI, a couple of days ago, now the patient has presented with, left ventricular failure signs, all dyspneas. There's dyspnea, there's like, orthopnea, paranoctural dyspnea, plus, so they're going to say either the person had like, rheumatic fever. So now it's coming with crescendo, decrescendo murmur, or it's coming like, ejection systolic murmur. So this is how you are going to differentiate based upon inspiration and expiration. They are going to like, tell you if it's left-sided murmur or the right-sided murmur. All right, guys. One more thing which I forgot to tell you is the site. Okay. So coming to this side is that, aortic. So you draw a sternum and you make like, these three checkpoints for yourself. There's second, fourth, and fifth intercostal space. So if they tell you, if you hear this on the right side of the sternum in the second intercostal space, so that's aortic. So either you're going to differentiate murmurs based upon the site where it is best heard, or based upon inspiration on expiration. So this is the right side and this is the left side. So either they're going to tell you, this is heard best in the right side of the sternum in the second intercostal space. But do not confuse this with left side and right sided murmurs, guys. That was something else, which I've already, I hope I made it clear to you. Like the mitral is opening in the aorta, and from the pulmonary, it's coming to the tricuspid. So, like, one is left sided and one is right sided. Either it's going to given in the MCQ, whether it's left-sided or right-sided murmur based upon inspiration, expiration, or it's going to tell you that it's ejection systolic murmur, best heard on the right side of intercostal space, so the right of the sternum. Coming to the pulmonary, it will be telling you like, it's basically on the left side of the sternum in the second intercostal space. Coming to the tricuspid, it will be like, lowered left sternal, and mitral, of course, it's always in the apex of the mid-clavicular line. Guys, am I clear? So the MCQ, if it comes to you based upon the inspiration, expiration, or based upon the site, will you be able to solve it, guys? That's perfect. That's perfect. All right. I'm loving the response, guys. So be quick. All right. So more or less the last part of the lecture, like, we are ending that, almost going to end the lecture. So another most important murmur which you're going to remember for your exam is mitral stenosis. So, mitral stenosis, now the examiners are pretty tricky. So how they are going to tell you, like, this is mitral stenosis, they are going to use synonyms. So mitral stenosis is the most common murmur which is going to happen after rheumatic fever. So how they're going to tell you, it's like, after rheumatic fever, they're going to tell you that, the person has traveled from one of the developing countries, where there is like, antibiotics, and, the medical facilities are low. Maybe they can tell you like, some Mozambique, some country like that. And you'll be wondering, because, the medical knowledge, the diseases are pretty much racist. For example, the TB, whenever they tell you like there is a TB, they're going to tell you indirectly the person is coming from India. For example, if they're telling you the patient is having dengue, they're going to tell you like, the person is more or less coming from like, Thailand. For example, malaria. So it's going to be coming from Africa. So there's racism with the diseases. So similarly, coming to over here, they're telling you like, when they're mentioning a developing country, they're telling you the person has no like, no longer like, not good access to any high intensive antibiotics, whereas in developed country they have high intensive antibiotics and they treat the rheumatic fever. So basically what happens, rheumatic fever leads to mitral stenosis. All right, guys, now come back to the initial picture when I explained to you the stenosis part. The stenosis, what did I say? It is incomplete opening of the valve. So when I said, the door is like, unable to like, open completely, so there's high pressure behind it. What is going to happen? Like, I have made this diagram. I'm so sorry. I hope you guys are not offended by this, but it's just a funny diagram. So this is LA and the down is LV. So this is basically mitral stenosis, the grip on someone's throat. So what's going to happen? The blood flow is no longer happening down. So what's happening over there is basically there's amount of blood volume in the left atrium is increasing because it's no longer like passing towards the left ventricular. So when increase in blood volume in the LA, what's going to happen? It's not Los Angeles, guys. It's the left atrium. LA sounds a little bit cooler, so that's why I'm using it. All right, guys. So coming back to it, it's left atrial pressure. So what's going to happen is the blood volume is going to increase in the left atrial pressure. What's going to happen back? So just remember traffic congestion, guys. So if there's a traffic congestion, someone is like, talking to their mom or dad on the phone or screaming, like, fighting with someone. So there's congestion starting from that point and it moves all the way backwards. And you might be thinking, like, unfortunately, someone is like, in the accident or something. And when you get up and you see, like, the people, two silly people, because of them, everyone is like, suffering. So well, you're going to do nothing. You're going to sit back in the car and maybe like horn a bit. So coming back to this, what's going to happen because of the increased left atrial pressure, there's going to be backflow. So the blood is coming from the pulmonary, so there's going to be like pulmonary congestion. And because of that pulmonary congestion, what's going to happen? Secondary pulmonary vasoconstriction. And when vasoconstriction is happening, definitely there's pulmonary hypertension and backflow again. So from where the pulmonary flow is coming, it's coming from the right ventricle. So what's going to happen? It's difficult for the right ventricular to pump, and eventually it's going to lead to right ventricular failure. Am I clear, guys? That's perfect. Okay. Now, see, what is happening is that because of the left atrial pressure, continues there's left atrial pressure over a prolonged period of time. What's going to happen? When you go to gym, they keep on increasing the pressure, like like first 5 kg, then 10 kg. What's going to happen? Hypertrophy is going to happen. So what's going to happen? Left atrial hypertrophy is going to happen. And here there is another MCQ, guys. Very high yield MCQ. Left atrial hypertrophy is going to lead to straightening of the left heart border. So it can tell you in the exam, there's a in the chest x-ray, there's straightening of the left heart border. Oh, then you'll say, oh, I had this lecture. So it's because of the left atrial hypertrophy. What's happening? Okay, I remembered that picture of the face and there was stenosis. So this is how you are going to remember straightening of the left heart border. Nothing to memorize, guys. Very simple, very easy. Okay, so now there's left hypertrophy. Now there's increase basically in the surface area of the left atrium. Okay, leave that, leave the surface area. So because of the left atrial hypertrophy, what's going to happen is, there will be pooling of the blood and all that. So atrial fibrillation will ensue. Okay, so what will they give you in the exam? The patient had some kind of murmur and now he presented with a stroke. So from there, you're going to use your brain. So how can a stroke happen? Oh, so it's because of the atrial fibrillation. And from where did the atrial fibrillation come? Oh, so there was like, hypertrophy and left atrial pressure. And how did the left atrial pressure increase? Because of the stenosis. So this is how you are going to use your mind back and forth. The examiners are going to make sandwich out of your minds. So that's why I'm here to make it like, really simple for you. So let's go again through the MCQs. So developing country. Okay. In echo, what will be the thing? Narrowing of the valve. And I've already explained to you the different types of murmur. So mid diastolic murmur. Am I clear, guys? Any question? Okay. So the last part of this adult murmurs is mitral valve prolapse. Just remember a basketball, all right? MVP is most very important person. So you can use the basketball mnemonic. Basically, they're going to tell there's a person with tall, thin, like arms or maybe loose joints, flexible person, telling you about the Ehlers-Danlos. So there's a mid systolic click. You can just like remember it. Um, More or less with the basketball mnemonic. So guys, till now, are you having any questions? If you want to ask in the WhatsApp group. So then I'll be moving on to the next part of the lecture. Okay. So basically, how you're going to remember this is you're going to remember that a person is shooting from the middle of the court with a great suspense. All right. If you want to remember the mnemonic, so he's shooting from the middle of the court with a great suspense and finishing the ball entering the net with a click. So mid-systolic click. So you can remember this this way. All right, guys. So coming to the end of the important lecture is the children. All right. So guys, now there's conditions called as most common cyanotic. So there are some conditions, most common cyanotic and acyanotic heart conditions, which are based upon differentiated with cyanosis. So there are like in order. How you're going to remember is like there's tetralogy of palate, there's transposition of great arteries, there's tricuspid atresia, truncus arteriosus, totus anomalous pulmonary venous. So there are different types of like cyanotic heart conditions, but how to remember each and everything? Again, let's make it very simple and break it down, because you're not going to go through whole of the pathology and everything. So there are particular clinchers which you're going to remember. So when it comes to TOF, you have to remember this on your fingertip. It's one of the most common cyanotic heart condition. All right. The important thing over here I've highlighted is that it is not present at birth. So if they tell you if there is some kind of like cyanosis with a murmur and it is present at birth, you can struck off TOF straight away, because it's going to be best heard around 1 to 2 months after birth. So what is the important clincher over here is this: it will be happening with cyanosis, with ejection systolic murmur, and not at birth. So if you remember these 3 points, these are enough for the TOF, for the sake of the exam. So definitely ejection systolic murmur is due to the pulmonary stenosis. Again, I've already explained to you the murmurs. What else you have to remember for the MCQs is boot-shaped heart. The ECG might be showing like, why right ventricular hypertrophy. No need to remember, guys. And complication is pulmonary regurgitation, because, doctors will tend to repair pulmonary stenosis, and that can lead to pulmonary regurgitation later on. All right, guys. Now, how to differentiate it between other of the cyanotic heart condition is transposition of great arteries. So you can differentiate it this with the TOF is that there will be cyanosis at birth. All right. Cyanosis at birth with no murmur. Okay. Whereas TOF, like, it is not at birth. This is how you're going to differentiate between transposition of great arteries and TOF. So TOF will be having murmur and transposition. So this is how you're going to like, play with your mind and quickly like, answer the question. Coming to tricuspid atresia, there's this pansystolic murmur with cyanosis. Now you also know that ventricular septal defect will also be I'm so sorry for the so it's ventricular septal defect will be also pansystolic murmur. But to differentiate between tricuspid atresia and VSD is that pan will be having no cyanosis because it's acyanotic, whereas tricuspid will be having cyanosis. Okay, and it will be also immediately after birth. So like more or less the MCQs are going to come from any of these three questions. Coming to another type of murmur is PDA, which is continuous machinery like murmurs, which everyone knows. And I think so I don't need to explain that murmur, so everyone knows that. Basically you have to remember indomethacin related to it, and that's pretty much it. So guys, any questions till now? So I'm going to turn off the screen recording. Okay, and I'm going to stop the recording as well. Just give me 1 second, guys.